welcome to Wanies Academy, and you're welcome to our biology class once again. Today, our topic for today is competition. So, our objectives for today's lessons are at the end of the lesson, you should be able to define competition. You should be able to differentiate between intraspecific and interspecific competition. And also, you should be able to identify types of competition. Okay, so let's delve into what we have for today. Speaking about competition, what is competition? Competition is defined as an interaction between organisms or species where they both require the same limited resources, leading to a struggle for survival and reproduction. Okay, let's look at these in more simpler terms. When we talk about competition, we're simply talking about those living organisms, in fact, all living organisms, competing or struggling for a particular resources that is essential for their life processes. Examples of such resources are food, water, light, mate, and even territory. Okay, let's look at the types of competition. There are two main types of competition. When we talk about competition, competition can either be intraspecific. When I say intraspecific, this is what I mean. Intraspecific competition, or it can be interspecific. I don't want you to make a mistake in the spellings. This is interspecific. Okay, so we have intraspecific competition and we have interspecific competition. So these are the two types of competition. I'm going to be explaining each of them to you now. When we talk about intraspecific competition, what do we mean? This is a kind of competition that exists between species or organisms of the same species. For example, in an intraspecific competition, we can have plants of the same species competing for sunlight and nutrients. That is, for instance, you have a piece of land where you planted maize, only maize plants or crops on it. And then these plants, as they are all from the same family, that is the same species, are all competing for the same resources such as light, water, nutrients, and so on. Okay, so this is what we mean by intraspecific competition. It has to do with organisms of the same species within themselves. That brings about the word intra. Next, we have the interspecific competition. When we're talking about interspecific competition, it's just like the opposite of intra. Interspecific competition has to do with organisms of different species. For example, you have lions and leopards competing for the same prey. Lions are totally from a different family, or they are a whole different organism, different from the leopards. Okay, but when you have these two coming together to compete for essential life resources such as maybe food, or obviously they can compete for prey. So they can compete for mates, but they can compete for prey, for food, and other life resources. So when you have these two different organisms coming together to compete for these resources, we call it an interspecific competition. That is a competition that has to do with two different organisms. Two organisms of different species. They are in no way related. This is what we mean by interspecific competition. So now, when we're talking about competition, let's take a look at competition in plants. Did you know that plants actually compete for life resources, essential life resources? Let's take a look at this diagram right here. This is an example of a young seedlings that are just sprouting up, and you see them competing for sunlight, because without the sunlight they can't thrive. Without this sunlight, they can't survive. So this sunlight is essential for their existence. And so for them to continue living, they have to compete for sunlight. And if you take a closer look at this diagram right here, you will see that they are also competing for space, also competing for nutrients, because they are all kind of like packed together in a piece of land. So they have to compete for these life resources. Also in the forest, you have tall trees, you have shrubs, you have canopies, you have the grasses. All these compete for one resources or the other. The grasses also compete for sunlight, so also as the tall trees also compete for sunlight. So whichever is able to survive this competition will pass on these useful traits to their offspring, so that those with less valuable or less useful traits are usually going to extinction. They are usually eliminated. That is one thing about competition. Those who are not able to survive or get these life resources are usually completely eliminated. But those who thrive pass on these useful traits to their offspring. So this is for competition in plants. What about competition in animals? Here I have a picture of two wild dogs competing for something. Take a closer look at this picture. What do you think they're competing for? Are they competing for mates or are they competing for food? I think the correct answer is food. They are actually competing for food. So you can see that this is essential. In an ecosystem, it is essential. Referring back to our previous class, competition is also essential to bring about balance in the ecosystem. So these two wild dogs are physically combating. They are struggling with each other for which is going to have this prey to themselves. So anyone that is able to overpower the other would automatically have the prey for itself. So those who are not able to survive this competition are eliminated. Imagine when an organism cannot access food, can't access water, can't even access mates. That organism is eliminated. So this is the importance of competition, passing on of these useful traits to the next generation. Okay, having talked about this, do you have any questions so far? Beautiful. So in the absence of none, I would ask you just a few questions. Can you define competition? That is beautiful. So competition is an interaction between organisms or species where they both require the same limited resources, which leads to a struggle for survival and reproduction. Okay, thank you so much for joining our classes today. We will be stopping here, but don't forget to join us in more or other subsequent classes. Thank you so much for joining. Bye for now.